This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, Bruchim Abam. So this is the Shiur before the Yom Tov of Chanukah, Ba'aleinu L'Tova, and I want to present to you an idea, a thesis that's been percolating for many years, not many months. It's been many years that I've thought about giving this Shiur, and I was hesitant for two reasons. First of all, the concept and the ideas are very unique, very novel, very creative, and I was a little nervous to present them. And also, I wasn't sure how much substantiation there is, but this year we're going for it. Hopefully we have some degree of substantiation for this concept. And so let us begin. If you look at the Alanisim, and hopefully we will see who wrote the Alanisim. The Alanisim, which is specific for Chanukah, so the emphasis and the focus is on the military victory. The fact that Klal Yisrael was facing an opponent which was stronger than them, more numerous than them, more powerful than them, better armed. And this was certainly the miracle that Klal Yisrael needed. After all, our entire existence was on the line. If the Yevanim would have subjugated us completely, that would have been the end of Torah mitzvahs. And that was certainly the nes that we were hoping for and that we needed. And the question is, and this is very interesting, Maramakai. Tell you the truth, it's a concept that I heard many years ago. It probably goes back, 8 years ago, 10 years ago. I heard it from a great speaker, a great Rav. His name was Rav Isaac Bernstein. He was a Rav who passed away in his middle ages. He was a rabbi in London. He actually came from Ireland. Maybe the best speaker, pure speaker I ever heard. And he always presented very novel ideas. And he quoted a concept from Rabbi Yashaber Soloveitchik, who, I guess where I come from, it's not a name that necessarily is quoted often by my Rabbeim, but he has very creative and novel ideas. He was a Goin. My grandfather told me when he was younger, he used to go to Rabbi Yashaber's yard site, Shiurim, and he is like a Kamayin HaMaskaber. I think we mentioned on Shabbos that gave Shiurim for hours and hours and hours. He's a grandson of Chaim Brisker. And his question is, we're commemorating the miracle of Rabbim B'Yad Ma'atim. I mean, this is not the first Rabbim B'Yad Ma'atim in our history. Rabbim B'Yad Ma'atim is like, in Jewish history, Rabbim B'Yad Ma'atim is every month on the calendar is Rabbim B'Yad Ma'atim. Yeshua ben Nun comes into Eretz Yisrael. He defeats the Malchei Canaan. And there's no Yom Tov to commemorate, Yeshua's overtake of the country of Canaan. Even though that might have been more Rabbim B'Yad Ma'atim than the miracle of Chanukah. There's no Yom Tov to commemorate Rabbim B'Yad Ma'atim of Yeshua ben Nun. Or Yanai HaMelech won many miraculous victories with very few soldiers, overcoming a tremendous army. And there's no commemoration. There's not even a day on the calendar that you don't say Tachnan. Can you imagine that? There's no day on the calendar. And yet, here we come, Chanukah, all of a sudden, Rabbim B'Yad Ma'atim, and it's an 8-day Yom Tov. What's different about this Rabbim B'Yad Ma'atim than the numerous Rabbim B'Yad Ma'atims in history? Okay, that is the question. Now, I've been looking for this essay of Rav Soloveitchik for many years. So I looked in the classic places, couldn't find it until my brother got me Oitzer HaChachma, and that usually solves the problem. And I looked actually, Rav Hershel Schachter has a sefer on Rav Soloveitchik called Nepninei Harav, and he quotes sort of a little bit, like a touch of this idea, and he says, look in an article. So I looked up the article. The article is in an old edition of Hadarom, in edition 65, and this is the article. It was not written by Rav Soloveitchik himself. It was written by, I guess, one of his Talmidim, a Rav Bloy. And here you have on the sheet of number 2, that's the question, what is significant about this Rabbim B'Yad Ma'atim? Okay, so let's move on. Maybe what we're commemorating is more the miracle of the Neiros, the miracle of the Shemen. The Gemara tells us in Masechta Shabbos, one of the most well-known Gemaras in Shas, that on the 25th day of Kislev begins the 8 days of Chanukah, because the Yevanim went into the Heichal, and they rendered impure all the Shmanim, all the oil in the Heichal, and when the Chashmonaim prevailed, and they were victorious, they searched, they only found one jug. Somebody told me that jug is not the right word. It's a better English word. Cruise. Okay, whatever you want to call it, yeah? Daniel, maybe Daniel. Yeah, we'll have to discuss it after, Daniel. Right? Whatever the word is, jug, cruise, pach. But but they found one pach shemen that was enough to light for one night, and it lasted for 8 nights. And the Gemara says the next year they were koiveya, and they made a yomtiv for Hallel v'Haida. So maybe you'll say that's the main zikar, maybe that's the main commemoration of the yomtiv of Chanukah. But asks Rav Soloveitchik, what is the big deal about the fact that a jug of oil that's supposed to last for 1 day lasted for 8 days? This is a regular, everyday miracle that happened in the Beis HaMikdash for 410 years in the Bayis Rishon, and a good chunk of the Bayis Sheni. The Gemara tells us that the Ner Ma'aravi never ever extinguished in the times of the first Beis HaMikdash. Is there a Yom Tif that commemorates the fact that the Ner Ma'aravi never went out? There's no such Yom Tif. There's no such calendar date. There's barely a mention of it. I don't even think it's one of the miracles that's mentioned in the Mishnah and Pirkei Avos about the miracles that took place in the Beis HaMikdash. The Beis HaMikdash was malei v'gadosh of miracles. You went to the Beis HaMikdash, you saw the column of smoke going straight up to the heavens, and the wind could blow the north, the south, the east, the west. There's no commemoration, there's no Yom Tif. Women could go in, they could smell the meat, they don't miscarry, the meat never spoiled, the Kohen Gadol never became tamei. There are kama v'chama nisim and aflois in the Beis HaMikdash every single day, and there are no Yomim Tovim to commemorate any of them. So big deal! One jug of oil that was supposed to last for 1 night lasted for 8 nights. That's part of the game in the Beis HaMikdash. Everything is miraculous. Why make a special Yom Tif to commemorate the miracle of the oil? And the truth is, as Rav Soloveitchik points out very correctly, a miracle is basically meaningless to us unless it has eternal consequence. So, for instance, the reason why we don't commemorate the miracle that Yeshua ben Nun conquered Canaan is because it was a temporary miracle. So he conquered Canaan, but then Bavel came and kicked us out. So how long did Yeshua ben Nun's miracle last for? For 800 or so years. But we don't commemorate a miracle that doesn't have eternal significance. We don't commemorate the miracles of the conquest of Yanai HaMelech because a few years later, he was overtaken. And we don't commemorate any of the miracles that took place in the Beis HaMikdash. So what is significant about the military victory in the times of Chanukah, and what is significant about the miracle of the oil? One of the famous questions when it comes to Chanukah is the fact that you have no Gemara on Chanukah. You don't have any Masechta on Chanukah. You have a few blot in Masechta Shabbos and Parak B'Amem Adlikin, but there's no Masechta for Chanukah. Haloi Davarhu. Think about it. Purim is 1 day, and it has Masechta Megillah is 30 blot. So you'd expect Chanukah should have 8 times that amount, 240 blot in Masechta Chanukah. And there is no Masechta Chanukah, right? That's one of the classic questions when it comes to Chanukah. And there's a famous comment in the Sefer Tamei HaMinhagim, who they quote the Chassam Sofer, and there's a lot of Torah on this Chassam Sofer, that the Chashmonaim unlawfully, illegally usurped Melucha and became kings. Actually, if you look in the Lashon of the Rambam, I can tell you, Ha'ara Nefla, Rav Shmuel, I can tell you how maybe put in the next Mishnah Berurah. They did Chelek Vav yet? No, sorry. Next volume?
No, next volume. After Shabbos.
After Shabbos. So maybe you put in this Ha'ara. And you look in the Rambam writes, by Hilchas Chanukah, he tells you the whole story. And the Rambam says the Chashmonaim took over Melucha, they became Malachim, they became kings, and they restored Malchus to Klal Yisrael for 200 years. Now, wait a second. Why is the Rambam telling me that the Chashmonaim became kings? Doesn't the Ramban say that it was an Aveira that they became kings? The Ramban says that the reason why the Chashmonaim were wiped out is because they became kings. And the Achronim Ramadaik in the Rambam, that the Rambam disagrees with the Ramban, and the Rambam learns there was nothing wrong that the Chashmonaim became kings. And the Rambam learns the pasuk La Yasser Shem Yehuda differently than the Ramban. If you look in the Mishnah Berurah quotes the Rambam word for word, and he leaves out the 3 words that they became Malachim. So B'Cheskel Abramsky is medayik that the Mishnah Berurah didn't want to be koiveya like the Rambam against the Ramban. So he left out those 3 words of the Rambam when he was matik, the words of... Okay. In any event, the Chassam Sofer is supposedly said that who redacted the Mishnayos? Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi. Yehuda Hanassi was from the family of David HaMelech, from the family of Yehuda, Shevet Yehuda. And so to speak, he took up the cause of his mishpacha. He didn't want to make a Masechta for Chanukah because he didn't feel it was right that the Chashmonaim became kings. That's a famous answer of Chassam Sofer, a controversial answer of Chassam Sofer. What all of a sudden Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi is, defending his family. He's making the Mishnayos personal. He's bringing in personal. He has a personal agenda in writing the Mishnayos. But that's a discussion for another time. We want to explore, Boisai, a novel reason why there is no Masechta in Shas called Masechta Chanukah. Rav Soloveitchik sort of opens up this sugya, and what I'm going to tell you is really out there, by asking a stira on 2 Gemaras. The Gemara in Moed says like this. Look at number 6. Amar Reb Chelvoi, Amar Rav Huna. If somebody sees a Sefer Torah that's torn, chas v'shalom, if you see somebody go chas v'shalom and tear a Sefer Torah, says the Gemara, you need to rice kriya, you need to tear kriya 2 times. Says the Gemara, 1 for the gevil, 1 for the klaf, and the echad al aksav, and 1 for the writing. It's not enough to tear once for the ripping of the letters. You have to tear once for the gevil, 1 for the parchment, and 1 for the letters of the Sefer Torah. Okay, sounds simple enough. In other words, when a Sefer Torah is torn, 2 things are happening. The gevil, you say, why does the gevil have kedusha? There's a famous kasha. The Zohar HaKadosh says, where does the word Yisrael come from? Yesh shishim ribay oisiyos la Torah. The problem is, if you count the letters, you only have about half that amount. You only have about 300 and change. So one of the answers that's given is you have the black and the white. The white is also kedusha. The in-between the lines. The gevil also has kedusha. So if chas v'shalom somebody sees a Sefer Torah it's torn, you have to rice kriya 2 times. Fragt Rav Soloveitchik, a really very unusual question. The Gemara says in Masechta Avodah Zarah that when Rav Chananya ben Tradion, by the way, we just had in Parshas Vayishlach a remez to Rabbi Chananya ben Tradion. Where? The Ohr HaChaim HaKadosh says that the Gilgul of Rav Chananya ben Tradion was in Dinah. That's why they tell Dinah, V'hinei rachavas yadayim, rachavas is Rosh Tevos, Rabbi Chanina ben Tradion. Okay, but that has nothing to do with anything. Anyway, so Rav Chanina ben Tradion was taken out to be killed by the Romans, and he was in the middle of giving Shiur, and the Romans took a Sefer Torah and they wrapped him in the Sefer Torah, and they put vines around him, and they set fire to the Sefer Torah and to Rabbi Chanina ben Tradion. And they wanted to prolong his death, they wanted to prolong his agony, so they took sponges and they soaked the sponges in water and they put it by his heart to prolong his death. So his daughter says, Abba, I can't take it, I can't see you like this. He said, no, just the opposite, Adarabba. If I would have been burned without a Sefer Torah, I would have been worried. But now that I'm being burned together with the Sefer Torah, whoever takes up the cause of the Sefer Torah will take up my cause. The Gemara says, they asked Rabbi Chanina ben Tradion, what do you see, Rabbi? You're being burnt. You're going up in fire. What do you see? Says Rabbi Chanina ben Tradion, I see Gilyai Nisrafin v'Oisiyos Parchos. I see the white, I see the parchment being burned, but the words and the letters of the Sefer Torah are not being burned, just the opposite. The letters are flying up to Shamayim. The Goyim have no shlita over the words of the Torah. The words of the Torah are L'netzach Netzachim Torah Zuloitei Mochlefes. The Goyim are not poyel on the words of the Sefer Torah. The letters Oisiyos Parchos. So Frekt Rav Soloveitchik, wait a second. If in fact when a Sefer Torah is burned, they can only tear the parchment, they can't tear the oisiyos because the oisiyos fly up in the air, then why is the halacha when you see a Sefer Torah torn, you have to rice kriya twice? You should only rice kriya once. You should rice kriya for the gevil, but you shouldn't have to tear kriya for the oisiyos. The oisiyos are unaffected. The oisiyos cannot be ripped, they cannot be destroyed, they're immutable, the eternal. It's a stira between Moed Katan and Avodah Zarah. In Moed Katan it says you rice for the oisiyos, you rice for the gevil. And the Gemara in Avodah Zarah says no. Gilyoy nisrafin v'oisiyos parchos. A goy nistik kasha. Says Rav Soloveitchik, there is a major error that not only do non-Jews have about Chanukah, not only do secular Jews have about Chanukah, but just about everybody has about Chanukah. And that is, nobody really knows the true story. And that is because the true story was intentionally hidden from Klal Yisrael. But we're going to learn what it is. Says Rav Soloveitchik, if you think that the war and the danger in the time of Chanukah was Jew versus Greek, you completely missed the boat. That's maybe what they taught you, but that's not what happened. Says Rav Soloveitchik, you have to understand that what was happening during Chanukah never ever happened in the history of the Jewish people, and it never happened again. How's that? Every other malchus that ever subjugated us, their goal was lahashmid, laroig, uliabed, to destroy, obliterate, and decimate the bodies of the Jewish people. And for that, Goyim are very, very qualified. They are very well suited for that goal. However, the gezerah of the Yevanim was not lahashmid, was not la'abed, was not laroig. It was letame ulechalel. It was to render impure and to profane, to make chulin. Says Rav Soloveitchik, a goy could be hashmed. A goy could be laharoig. A goy could be ma'abed. A goy cannot be matame, and a goy cannot be machalel. A goy has no capacity to make something tameh. Goyim are not tameh. Lamashal. You know, when you go to a store, the halacha is when you wake up in the morning, you're not allowed to touch food. Before you wash negel vaser, you're not allowed to touch food. So I have a kasha for you. You go to the pizza store. You think, let's say the guy serves you the food. You think you wash negel vaser? I doubt it. So how are you allowed to eat the food? The answer is because a guy is not tameh. Only someone who has the potential for kedusha could become tameh. The problem is if the guy serving you the food is a religious Jew. That's the problem. In a way, you know, in the kashrus industry, sometimes they're hesitant to give hechsherim to a non-Jewish owned store. But in a way, you're better off with the non-Jewish in terms of the handling of the food. Because you have a non-Jewish person, you have a yid who's not from a yid, he touches your food, you can't eat the food. There are heterim, you know, presumably he brushed his teeth. And that's one. And he probably took a shower. And you hope at least one time, by the time he got around to serving you the food, you hope throughout the course of the day he washed 3 times. Maybe even one time the diavad is good enough. But it's not so pashut. But a goy is not matame. A goy doesn't have the capacity for kedusha. He can't render pure and impure. Memela, says Rav Soloveitchik, if you think that what took place in the times of Chanukah were a bunch of Syrian Greeks wearing those, sandals with the straps that go up to the knees, if you think they were coming into the houses and say, hey Jew, don't learn Torah and don't do mitzvahs and don't keep Rosh Chodesh and don't do Milah, you completely blew it. You fell for what they taught you. That's not what happened. So it says Rav Soloveitchik, a number of tremendous things. Now we have to see, where do they come from? First of all, he says, in the times of Chanukah, Ruba de Ruba of Klal Yisrael abdicated the religion. I never heard that before. The majority of Klal Yisrael left Yahadus. But they intermarried, they gave up Shabbos, they gave up Limanat Torah, they gave up Rosh Chodesh. Roiv Klal Yisrael, Ruba de Ruba of Klal Yisrael left the fold. These people are called Misyavnim. Right? They were Hellenized. They abdicated Jewish tradition and Jewish philosophy, and they took on Greek culture and Greek philosophy. The war in the times of Chanukah had nothing to do with Yevanim. It was Jew versus Jew. It was Jew versus other Jew. It was religious Jew versus irreligious Jew. And a non-religious Jew could be matame the Torah and could be machalel the Torah. A guy can't be matame, a guy can't be machalel. Says Rav Soloveitchik, that's the answer to the stira in the Gemara. The Gemara in Moed Katan that says that when you see a Sefer Torah, you have to write Kriya twice. That's when a Jew tears the Sefer Torah. a Jew could tear the Gvil, and a Jew could be Oiker and Mashchis the Oisiyos HaTorah. The Gemara by Reb Chanina ben Trajan, when he saw a Gvil Nisraf Oisiyos Parchos, it was the Romans. The Romans could destroy the Gvil. The Romans can't touch the words of the Torah. And this is a historic fact that throughout the tragedies of Klal Yisrael, we had crusades, 1096, nothing happened to the Torah. Rashi lived through it, Tosfos lived through it, Torah zu loy tehei machleves. The Torah was not changed one iota. 1391, the Torah wasn't changed. 1492, the Torah wasn't changed. 1648, Torah wasn't changed. Not until Reform and Conservative Judaism, Haskalah, they were mashchis the Torah. They counterfeited the Torah. They destroyed the Torah. Only a Yid could destroy Torah. A guy can't destroy Torah. A guy could kill, they could murder, they could make gas chambers, they could make crematoria. They can't touch the Torah. When a guy tampers with the Torah, Gevil Nisraf, Va'oisiyos Parchos. A Yid, Maharsayich, Machrivayich, Mimayach Yetseyu. The destroyers of the Torah come from us. What's the biggest threat to Klal Yisrael today? The different streams of Judaism. The open streams of Judaism, right? That's the churban of Torah today. I'm not going to get too explicit. That's the biggest danger for Torah. The biggest danger is Klal Yisrael. So ask Rav Soloveitchik, if you look through the Alanisim, the most obvious thing is mentioned. You say, Ravim biad ma'atim, Tameim biad tahirim, Risham biad tzadikim. Could you want to hit the nail on the head? Yisraelim biad, right? Yevanim biad Yisraelim? Just say it. The answer is because that's not true. It never happened. It's Yisraelim biad Yisraelim. Says Rav Soloveitchik, so why don't we say it? Because we're just downright embarrassed of Chanukah. We're embarrassed. We're scared to say it. The Lashon of Alanisim, he says, is Lashon Saginar. Right? What do you call a blind person? You don't say he's blind. You say he has a lot of light. Just say he's blind. It's not nice, nitshain, it's not refined, it's not a nice way to talk. We cannot write about what happened in Chanukah. It is too embarrassing. It is the worst thing that ever happened in the history of Klal Yisrael. Says Rav Soloveitchik, never in our history has the majority of Klal Yisrael left Jewish practice until the story of Chanukah, until the events that preceded Chanukah, and never again. Yes, we've had movements, but never has the majority of Klal Yisrael left the fold. So to me, this is like, I never heard this in my life. I don't know, maybe you guys, you've heard this, you've learned this. I never heard this. And Rav Soloveitchik writes that, if you look at Masechta Shabbos, in the Gemara talks about the Yudches Gezeros that the Hillel and Shammai was masakein. When was that? That was in the aftermath of Chanukah. Why? Because they realized the danger that Klal Yisrael faced with the Torah that wasn't safeguarded. So they quickly made all kinds of takanas and gezeros rabbanan to safeguard the continuity of Klal Yisrael. Okay, so I'm learning this, I'm reading this, and by the way, he doesn't write this explicitly, but I definitely heard said over that this is why there's no Masechta on Chanukah. Masechta on Chanukah, we can write a Masechta about what happened. You can write, Tanu Rabbanon, Roiv Yisrael, Mizbayil Lemheim, Ve'rubam Kikulam, Nasu Nashim Nachriyos, Ve'amru, Les Din Ve'les Dayan, Ve'holchu Achar HaChachmas Yivanis. We would never say that. The Chachmei Yisrael were very zahir to say a bad word about the Yidden. They basically took Chanukah, and as they say in America, they put it under the rug and they threw it in the closet, and nobody knows anything about it. Because it was basically the most embarrassing thing that ever happened to Klal. So first of all, I'm reading this and I'm shaking and I'm nervous. Should I say this over? Is it true? Is that what happened? If it doesn't say it anywhere, if the story's not written anywhere, then how does he know this is what happened? So I'm doing research. I even contacted a friend of mine, Zachariah Holzer, who is a very chashuva mechaber Svarim. He wrote over Rav Soloveitchik's drashos in English, and he wrote over other Svarim from the Rishonim, and I asked him if he ever heard about this, and nobody ever heard Rav Soloveitchik say this. So, on the other hand, it's recorded in this journal, and I heard it many years ago from a very credible source. So I wanted to explore, first of all, a number of these ideas. Is it true that only a guy could be mechalel something and be matame something, and a yid cannot? Like, what's the basis of that idea? Yeah, it answers the stira between the Moed Katan and Avodah Zarah, but is that true? What's the basis for that? And also, just historically, what was going on in the times of Chanukah? Where were Klal Yisrael holding? Did we really abdicate Torah mitzvahs? What was going on back then? Okay, so the Siyata D'Shmaya, let's proceed. There's a very important Gemara. When we talk about the Yom Tov of Chanukah, what does the word Chanukah mean? So the Ran says, the famous comment, the Ran says what? Chanukah. They rested on the 25th day of Kislev. They rested from their enemies. So the Marsha, Masechta Shabbos, number 11, the Marsha asks, what do you mean they rested? You don't rest on Chanukah, you're allowed to do malacha on Chanukah. Rest in halacha means you don't do malacha. On Chanukah we do malacha. So what does it mean? Chanukah. So the Marsha says a different pshat. The Marsha says, based on the Gemara in Avodah Zarah, look at number 9, Daf Nun Beis Amud Beis. The Gemara in Avodah Zarah says, look at number 9, Daf Nun Beis Amud Beis. The Gemara says there was a lishka, there was a chamber in the Beis HaMikdash, that in this chamber they hid the stones of the Mizbeach, Sheshiktzu Anshe Yavan, that the Yavanim made disgusting. How did they make the stones of the Mizbeach disgusting? Amar of Sheishes, Sheshiktzu La'avodas Kacham. They worshipped it as Avodah Zarah. So you say, good for them. Imagine you come into my house and you start bowing down to my dining room table. So now what, I have to throw in the garbage? I didn't invite you. Don't bow down to my table. So the Goyim came into the Beis HaMikdash and they bowed down. They worshipped the Mizbeach. Why do we have to throw the Mizbeach in the garbage? But that's what the Gemara says. The Yavanim were meshakets. They rendered disgusting the Mizbeach. They worshipped it as Avodah Zarah, and they had to bury it. Says the Gemara, why? Amar of Papa, Hasam Kra Ashkach V'Darash. They found the pasuk and they darshan D'chsiv Ubau Ba Pritzim V'Chululuha. Pritzim came and they desecrated it. In other words, we have a drasha that the Goyim were able to desecrate the Mizbeach. So now the shaila is, what is the lamdas? What's the procedure that these pritzim, what are pritzim? Lawless, loose people. What's the lamdas that they use? What's the lamdas of ba pritzim v'chilaluha? It's a pasuk in Echeskel. How does that work? So it's very interesting. There's a machlekes rishonim what the lamdas of ba pritzim v'chilaluha is. You have it on your sheets in number 17, number 18. The Baal Amar, Rav Aaron Halevi, writes that the lumdus of Ba Pritzim Chalalua is, he says, a goy can never be metame and a goy can never be mechalel. So how did they destroy the Mizbeach? Says the Baal Hamor, when the Gemara says the Yavanim were meshakets the Mizbeach, it doesn't mean the Yavanim. It means the Misyavnim. The Jews destroyed it. The Jews worshipped it as Avodah Zarah. A Yid could be moyel behektish. If a Jew goes into the Beis HaMikdash and uses the klei shares for his own purposes and it serves it as Avodah Zarah, he takes out the kedusha. A goy can never do that. Exactly the idea that Rav Soloveitchik says that a goy can't be matame, a goy can't be machala. The Gemara that says Yavanim, it doesn't mean Yavanim. It means misyavnim. Hafla of a fella. So this idea that we didn't hear till the 20th century is already found in the Rishonim and the Baal Hamor. It's not clear, though, because the Ramban and the Melchemes disagrees, and the Ramban says there is a Gzeres HaKosov, that a guy who serves something which belongs ligavoya to hektish, if he worships as Avodah Zarah, he could be mechalel, he could be metameyet. So I don't think it's absolutely unanimous that a guy doesn't have the ability to be metameyet, be mechalel, but at least we showed that there is basis in the Rishonim for such a concept that, and we know it's true. We know that a Jew is able to be metame much more than a guy. That's for sure a true concept. For instance, normally something which is a sheni betuma cannot be metame anything else. But Truma, it can make a shlishi. Why? The holier something is, the more its capacity for Tumah. And Truma, which is a shlishi, can't make anything into Revi, but it can make Kodshim into Revi. So we certainly understand there's a concept, the more holy something is, the more its capacity to become Tameh, and offer to be Metame something else. I want to try to bring at least some degree of historical precedence that things were very bad before the Chashmonaim took charge. Let's go back for a moment to the Al Anisim. By the way, Rav Soloveitchik has a very novel pshat. V'achar kein bo'u v'anechel et vir beisecha. And then your children came into the Beis HaMikdash. Huh? Where did they come from? What do you mean they came? Me'ayin basem. Where did they come from? You know where they came from? They came back after having left Yahadus. They came back to bask in the light of Judaism. That's what it means. V'achar kein bo'u v'anecha. You look in the beginning of Al Anisim, and this just like struck me. Bimei Matisyahu ben Yochanan Kohen Gadol. Sounds good. It sounds like good yichus, right? Matisyahu, Yochanan Kohen Gadol. Huh? Yochanan? I was like, is that the same Yochanan? What does the Gemara say about Yochanan? It's a mission of Avos. V'atanan, al tamin ba'atzmachad yoy moischa. If you're a good guy, and you're a tzaddik, and you're a Talmid Chacham, and you think, I have this world down pat, I have this down, I have the tzaddik thing down, you're dead meat. Never trust yourself until the day you die. Why? Says the Gemara, the Mishnah says, Sharei Yochanan Kohen Gadol, Shimesh Bekohuna Gedoyla Shmoinim Shana. Basically, Yochanan Gadol, he presided as the leading Jew, as Kohen Gadol, for 80 years, Ulav Esoif Naset Seduki, and then he became a heretic. Right? He's Gadol Hadar, 80 years, he's going in every Yom Kippur into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and everyone's singing, Mare Kohen, for 80 years, right? He's in everybody's house, right over the Shabbos Licht, everyone has a picture of Yochanan Kohen Gadol, and then, every magazine you open, in the middle center, Yochanan Kohen Gadol speaking over here, and he did this, and they brought him Pidyon Petr Chamar, right? Everything. And then, 80 years later, he's a persona non grata. He becomes a tzedaki. So the Gemara asks, because the Gemara previously said that Abayi said that anyone who's a tzaddik will never become a rasha. Oh yeah, what about Yochanan Kohen Gadol? Amar Abaye, no, you have to know who Yochanan Kohen Gadol was. He started off a rasha, Yanai. He then turned it around, he became a Baal Tshuva, he became Yochanan. And then he veered off again. Rava Amar, no. Yanai is one guy, Yochanan's another guy. Yanai was a rasha to begin with, Yochanan was always a tzaddik, and then he became a rasha. So here we have it. There was a man by the name of Yochanan Kohen Gadol, who after 80 years being Gadol Hadar, he became Tzeduki. So I have a little question for you. Matisyahu, the guy who saved Judaism, who was his father? Yochanan Kohen Gadol. That Yochanan? Was his father Yochanan, who became a Tzeduki? Now, if it was, I think that would give us like an eye-opening shake-up, that things were not the way we think they were. Meaning, if the Gadol Hadar was becoming a Tzeduki, you think he's the only one? You think, he had a bad day and he flipped? You could be sure that if Matisyahu's father was Yochanan Kohen Gadol, and he's the Gadol Hadar, and he went off, you could be sure a lot of other Jews were going off. I mean, if he became a Tzeduki, and he's the leader of the generation, you think everyone said, oh yeah, we always knew he was no good. I'm sure he took a lot of... They love it, right? So who was Matisyahu's father?
It's a machlokes, whether it goes on Matisyahu Kohen Gadol or...
Fine, but who is the Yochanan? Who is Matisyahu ben Yochanan? Matisyahu ben Yochanan. Who was this Yochanan? Who was it? A different Yochanan. So I don't think we ever brought in the Shiur before. We have a tshuva here from Shalas Tshuva's Divrei Yitziv, from the Kloisenberger Rebbe. And he says, a davar hafla of a fella. Number 20. Shalas Tshuva's Divrei Yitziv, Chelek Beis, Siman Reish Pei Beis. And the Klausenberg Rebbe, the Baal, Shefa Chaim, my friend, the Moshe Morgenstern, whose father was one of the associates of the Rebbe. He gave me a copy of the Shefa Chaim, and he says, Mamish Davar Nifla Ad Ma'od. Unbelievable. He says Matisyahu's father was Yochanan Kohen Gadol, who became a Tzeduki. And he says, you know where this comes from? This comes from the Sefer Baitzina Dinara. From who? From none other than Rav Baruch Mimezrich, the Maggid. The Maggid of Mezrich says that the father of Matisyahu was Yochanan Kohen Gadol, who became a Tzeduki. And then he says something, I never heard something so wondrous. We know the Tzedukim, one of their main averos were, they argued on the Prushim. The Prushim went into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and they prepared the Ketores in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. The Tzedukim say, no, you prepare the Ketores outside of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and then you go in with it. So then, if Yochanan Kohen Gadol became a Tzeduki, presumably, in the end of in his 81st year, when he was going to do the Avodah, he'd prepare the Ketores outside. So, as a tikkun for his Avera, preparing the Ketores right outside of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, what's right outside the Kodesh HaKadoshim? The Mezach HaKetores and the Menorah. His son Matisyahu rededicated the Menorah to be Masakin, the Ched of his father, Bra Kara Da'avuha. But then he says something mind-boggling. Even though there's no Masechta Chanukah, who knows how many times is Chanukah mentioned in Shisha Sidrei Mishnah? 6 times. So you have a Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah. One of the 6 months of the year the Shulchan go out is Rosh Hashanah. And you have a Mishnah in Bikurim. Then until Chanukah, you're Mevi V'Kairei. Very interesting. At the end of davening on Chanukah, you say, Mizmor Shir Chanukah Savai Sodava. The Kash is, what's that got to do with the price of tea in China? There's nothing to do with Chanukah. Because you say the word Chanukas? Give me a break. That's why we do it. Because we say the word Chanukas. No, because up until Chanukah, you're Mevi V'Kairei Bikurim. And the Parsha of Kriyas Bikurim is Arei Mimcha Hashem Ki Dilisani. This kapitel in Tehillim is what they said in the Beis HaMikdash up until Chanukah. Okay, so that's Bikurim. And there's a Mishnah in Tainus. And there's a Mishnah in Megillah. And there's a Mishnah in Moed And there's a Mishnah in Baba Kama. Rabbi Glatstein, listen to this one. This is unbelievable. Says the Maggid of Mezrich. Look at number 21. Let's read the Mishnah Baba Kama. A guy who's a blacksmith, and he's hammering away, he's chiseling away, and a spark goes out, and it burns down the building. He's chayav. You have a camel that's laden with flax, and he's too overburdened with flax, and the flax goes into someone's store and lights up the store. The Baal Hagomel is chayav. Listen to this. If the storekeeper puts a candle on the outside and someone trips over it and burns down the building, the storekeeper is chayiv. Rabbi Yehuda Omer b'ner Chanukah pater. Rabbi Yehuda says if it's ner Chanukah, the storekeeper is pater. Because you're allowed to put a candle outside ner Chanukah. Says the Maggid of Mezrich, Oyoy v'noira, Chenveni. If you rearrange the letters of Chenveni, Yochanan. If you rearrange the letters of Chenveni, Yochanan. You know what Yochanan did? Neiroi mi bachutz. He prepared the fire of the Ketores outside. Therefore he's chayiv. Comes Rabbi Yehuda, he says, don't worry. Matisyahu came along and he patered him up. Rabbi Yehuda Omer b'ner Chanukah pater. Matisyahu came along and exempted Yochanan the Chenveni by leaving the ner Chanukah outside. So the Klausenberger Rebbe feels that it's legitimate to say that the father of Matisyahu, the Gadol Hadar, became a tzedaki. So I think that should give you some picture, of what's going on in the times. By the way, he quotes his Zayda, the Bnei Yissaschar, who says, Al Pi Kabbalah, Yochanan didn't really go off and become a complete Tzeduki. He had certain cheshbonos, Al Pi the Arizal. I'm not sure what they were. Something to do with Tachnon. But I'll let you figure that out on your own time. But basically, he went off in where? He became Tzeduki in Torah Shabbat Peh. Therefore, Matisyahu was Masaki in the nearest of Chanukah. Chanukah is Keneged Torah Shabbat Peh because the Gemara says it's Leinita and Likasev. Okay. Now, obviously, it goes without saying that who am I to disagree with the Kleisenberger Rebbe? I don't even have to say that. So I'm not saying it as a way of disagreeing, but I don't think that Matisyahu's father was Yochanan Kohen Gadol, who became a tzedaki. First of all, the Vilna Gaon says he wasn't. The Vilna Gaon in Masechta Brachos says, look at number 22. The Vilna Gaon says that the Gemara says Yochanan Kohen Gadol served as Kohen Gadol for 80 years, and then he went off. Says the Gaon, there were two Yochanans. The father of Matisyahu was Yochanan Kohen Gadol. He was a tzaddik, he was a chassid, he was perfect, he never did navera, he was good from mitchilas aviyat seifai. But Yochanan had a son Matisyahu. Matisyahu had a son Shimon. Shimon had a son Yochanan. That Yochanan may have had a son Yanai, and it's a machlokes, did he have a son Yanai or was he Yanai? That Yochanan, who is a grandson of Matisyahu, he's the Kohen Gadol who served for 80 years and then went off. Now, why do I think that is more correct? I'll tell you why. I found in two Rishonim, in the Kolboi and in the Rekeach, very interesting, Davar Nifla. How many words are in Bimei Matisyahu ben Yochanan Kohen Gadol? The Kolboi says there are 124 words in Bimei Matisyahu ben Yochanan Kohen Gadol. Why? Gematria Yochanan. Because Yochanan wrote it. Yochanan wrote it. Interesting, if you look in the Rekeach says there are 125 words. Gematria Kohanim. But if Yochanan wrote it, he should have made 124. No. Mipnean v'sanusa, because of his humility, he wanted to make a tefillah with one more word than the gematria of his name. Now, I ask you, Yochanan Kohen Gadol wrote the tefillah, but he became a tzedaki. So why in the world are we keeping the tefillah of a tzedaki? Normally, something that even if a tzaddik wrote it, but if he became a tzedaki, you wouldn't think that you would preserve his tefillah. The only answer is, it's interesting, there's a comment of Rabbi Yosef Shal Levi Natan's on the Gemara Megillah, where Rabbi Yosef Shal is asked that he agrees with the Kleisenberger Rebbe, and he says that Matisyahu's father was Yochanan Kohen Gadol. So he says, why are we Mesyaches Matisyahu after somebody who became a tzedaki? So he says that because lest you think that Matisyahu, look, you know, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Everybody has a little bit of their father in them. So you might think, maybe Matisyahu also had something sour in him. So therefore, we're Mesyaches that the whole episode of Chanukah happened. Bimei Matisyahu ben Yochanan Kohen Gadol. Everything still took place when Yochanan was a Kohen Gadol. So maybe the Kleisenberger Rebbe holds that Taka Yochanan Kohen Gadol composed the tefillah, but he composed it when he was the Kohen Gadol and he was still on track, and then he went off. I think, I'm not even offering my opinion, I'm just saying, B'derech ha'ara, it would seem more mustaber like the Vilna Gaon, that it was a different Yochanan. But be it as it may, that means Gedolei Yisrael, Kleisenberger Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Levi Natanzan, they held that the father of the story of Chanukah became a heretic. So you could imagine, if one of the Gedolei Adar became a tzedaki, you could imagine what the state of Klal Yisrael was. But still, I wasn't really so satisfied. Is there any other basis? Does anybody else say that Klal Yisrael had fallen to such a low point? So again, my friend Zachariah Holzer sent me a Maramakoim from the Sefer Hadrash V'Ha'iyon of the Reish Rav Aaron Levine, who was killed by the Nazis. He has tremendous drashos, and he says also an amazing thing. You go back to the story in the Gemara, so they had enough oil to last for one night, and it lasted for 8 nights. Big deal. Like we said, there are millions of miracles happening in the Beis HaMikdash. Everything is miraculous. The column of smoke never moved. How's that possible? The fire never extinguished. How's that possible? So who cares if it lasted? The Ner Maravi lasted 410 years, and you're making a Yom Tov out of 8 days? Give me a break. So he says, the Gemara is a mashal. The Medrash in Parsha Tetzaveh says that Klal Yisrael is nimshala l'shem and zayis. Says the Reish Rav, K'shenichnesu Yevanim leheichal timu kol hashmanim shebeheichal. You know what that means? They came in and they basically defiled the entire Klal Yisrael. All the shmanim means every single yid. We were all in bad shape. But we found one flask of oil. That means there was a small group of Yidden that remained steadfast and remained faithful and remained neman to the Torah. And those small Yidden, from there they burned for 8 days, meaning not just 7 days, which means the 7 days of the week, but 8 days. They were able to cause Torah to light forever. L'netzach netzachim. That the flask of oil, that is a remez to Klal Yisrael, the state of Klal Yisrael, that the Yevanim really affected not just like a big Yerida. Jews, they stopped learning Daf Yomi, they learned Daf HaShavua, or they stopped learning Daf, maybe just the opposite, I don't know. But maybe the Jews were not learning so much. No. Forget it. Close up shop. Close the doors of the shul. Close the gemaras. That's it. We abandoned religion entirely. And they only found one flask of oil. When we say, right, Lahashkicham Tayrasecha La'aviram Nechuke Retenecha, it ain't no joke. It's not like, it was the real. They meant business, and they were successful. But when you have a small group of people that do the right thing, the miracle of Chanukah is that even a few Yechidim that are steadfast to Torah mitzvahs could regenerate the Torah, and they did regenerate the Torah. And that's the miracle of Chanukah. The miracle of Chanukah, that a few Jews who took up the cause of the Rebbeinu Shalom and said, Mila Hashem Elai, who were faithful to Torah, faithful to Rebbeinu Shalom, they regenerated Torah, they brought Torah knowledge back to the world, and that's why we are grateful for all eternity to the Chashmonaim, and we should be Zoicha that the light of Chanukah remain with us the whole year. Ad B'Yas Gol Tzedek Meher B'Yameinu. Amen.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.